No, it can't, I insisted, my voice cracking. Please, Ben, I think we've made a terrible mistake. We? It was you, he replied quietly. There's no mistake, Kathy. This is what you wanted, remember? A modern marriage. Folks, I'm Kathy, and this is a story of how I dug a pit for my own self. I had spent hours preparing Ben's favorite meal, grilled salmon with roasted vegetables and a quinoa salad. The table was set perfectly, the wine breathing in crystal glasses. Everything had to be just right for this conversation. I'm not saying we're broken, I began, watching Ben's fork freeze midair, a piece of salmon dangling precariously from its tines. But why not try something different? The look on his face was priceless, a mix of confusion and disbelief that almost made me laugh. But I kept my composure. This was too important to derail with giggles. I had been planning this moment for weeks, ever since Jen told me about her and Mike's arrangement. It had sounded so exciting, so modern. Why shouldn't we have that too? I leaned forward, feeling a surge of excitement coursing through me. An open marriage, Ben. It's what all the modern couples are doing these days. It keeps things fresh, exciting. I paused, searching his eyes. Don't you think we could use a little excitement? Are you not happy with our marriage? He finally managed to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. The hurt in his eyes made my stomach clench, but I pushed the feeling aside. I reached across the table, squeezing his hand reassuringly. Of course I am, honey, but think about it. We could have the best of both worlds, the stability of our marriage and the thrill of new experiences. I felt a twinge of guilt at the uncertainty in his eyes, but I pushed it aside. It's not about being unhappy. It's about growing together. I could see the wheels turning in Ben's head. He was always so considerate, always trying to make me happy. It was one of the things I loved about him, even if it sometimes felt a little predictable. That predictability, that steadiness. Wasn't that part of why I was suggesting this? To shake things up? I don't know, Kathy. This is a big step. Are you sure about this? He asked, his brow furrowed with concern as he set down his fork, the salmon forgotten. I mean, what about jealousy? What about feelings? What if one of us falls for someone else? I smiled widely, feeling victory within my grasp. I had answers prepared for all of these questions. Absolutely sure. Trust me, Ben. This will make our marriage stronger than ever. We'll set ground rules, communicate openly. It'll be an adventure we share together. I took a sip of wine, gathering my thoughts. As for jealousy, well, that's part of the growth. We learn to overcome it, to truly trust each other. And feelings? I leaned in closer, my excitement building. We'll be open about everything. We won't let emotions blind us. If anything, we'll emerge more connected than before. We're adults, Ben. We can handle it. Our love for each other is the foundation. Nothing will change that. I watched as Ben swallowed hard, his dinner long forgotten. Okay, he said softly, the word barely audible. I clapped my hands together, unable to contain my excitement. Oh, Ben, you won't regret this. I promise you. This is going to be amazing for both of us. As I launched into a discussion about setting boundaries and creating dating profiles, I noticed Ben's forced smile and distant nod. Little did I know, as I chattered on about our bright new future, that I had just set in motion the undoing of everything we had built together. With each enthusiastic word, I painted a picture of freedom and adventure, blissfully unaware of the cracks forming beneath the surface of our relationship. My excitement masked the unease settling in Ben's heart, a feeling I would soon come to regret overlooking. The salmon grew cold on our plates, the candles burned lower, and, somewhere in the universe, the threads of our marriage began to unravel. Guys, this is Ben, and here's my take on this mess Kathy created. It was 7:47 p.m. when I finally heard it. So, how was it? I forced a smile as Kathy walked through the door, but her excitement visibly dampened. I had spent the evening in a haze of anxiety, imagining all sorts of scenarios. But the woman who stood before me now looked deflated. Oh, it was great, she exclaimed, her voice a little too high. Jason is so interesting. Did you know he's climbed Kilimanjaro? And he has the most fascinating stories about his time in the Peace Corps. I nodded, trying to look interested while fighting the knot in my stomach. Sounds like quite a guy. I managed, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Kathy continued, describing the restaurant, the wine, the conversation. But with each word, the disconnect between her voice and her eyes grew. She was trying so hard to sound enthusiastic, but I could tell something was off. Her gestures were too animated, her laugh a touch too loud. It was as if she were performing a role she thought she should play rather than sharing a genuinely enjoyable experience. And then we said goodnight, she finished, her voice trailing off. I watched as she kicked off her heels and slumped onto the couch, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. The weariness in her posture contradicted everything she'd just said. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her it was okay if it wasn't what she expected. But another part, a part one wasn't proud of, felt a grim satisfaction. Wasn't this what she wanted? Wasn't this her idea of a modern marriage? That's great, honey, I said, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. I'm glad you had a good time. She squared her shoulders and plastered on a smile. I have another date next week, with someone else. Variety is the spice of life, right? I nodded mutely, watching as she headed to the bathroom. As the door closed behind her, I heard the shower start running. I sank into the armchair, my head in my hands. The sound of running water mingled with the ticking clock, creating a discordant symphony of our new reality. I felt like I was trapped in a surreal play, watching Kathy take on a role that didn't fit her at all. The more she tried to convince herself that this was normal, the more I wanted to shake her and remind her of who she truly was. It was a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from, a world where everything was upside down, and I was left holding the pieces. As I sat there, listening to the water run, I made a decision. If this was the game we were playing now, maybe it was time I started participating for real. Maybe it was time I stopped being the reliable, predictable bin that Kathy had grown so bored with. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, equal parts excitement and dread. What would happen if I actually embraced this new lifestyle? What would Kathy do if I started going on dates too? As the bathroom door opened and Kathy emerged, wrapped in her robe with damp hair clinging to her shoulders, I pushed those thoughts aside. For now, we'd continue this dance of pretend enthusiasm and forced smiles. But something had shifted inside me, a seed of change taking root. Hey, she said, her voice softer now. How was your evening? I straightened up, offering her a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. It was fine. Just caught up on some reading. Her eyes searched mine, perhaps looking for signs of resentment or disappointment. I knew I had to play my part convincingly. I'm glad you had fun tonight, I added, forcing the warmth into my tone. Thanks, she replied, a hint of uncertainty creeping in. Are you okay with all this? Of course, I said, shrugging it off. We're just trying something new, right? She smiled, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Maybe guilt, or perhaps a hint of worry about how this was all playing out. But I brushed it aside. The new bin was ready to step into the spotlight, and I was curious to see how far this could go. Little did Kathy know, this game was about to become a lot more complicated. Now let's check Kathy's side. The gentle clink of weights being set down drew my attention across the living room. Ben, fresh from his workout, wiped his brow with a towel, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. I watched him from the corner of my eye, pretending to be engrossed in my book, a strange feeling settling in my chest. He seemed different these days, lighter somehow, but also more distant. When did that happen? It had been weeks since we'd started this open marriage experiment, and things weren't going as I'd planned. My dates left me feeling drained rather than exhilarated. Each time I came home, I'd put on a show of enthusiasm, but it felt increasingly hollow. The excitement I'd anticipated had given way to a gnawing emptiness. Hey, how was your day? Ben asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between us. I looked up, momentarily startled. Oh, it was fine, I replied, forcing a smile that felt like a mask. Just the usual work stuff. He nodded, but I could see the concern flickering in his eyes. You seem a bit off lately. Everything okay? I shrugged, not wanting to reveal the confusion swirling within me. Just tired, I guess. All this dating. It's more exhausting than I thought. His expression shifted, the hint of a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Welcome to my world, he teased lightly, but there was an edge to his tone, a challenge that made my stomach twist. I wanted to roll my eyes, to dismiss his comment as typical Ben banter, but instead, I felt a pang of jealousy. Hadn't I encouraged him to embrace his own adventures? Yeah, well, maybe I'm just not cut out for it. I shot back, trying to keep my voice steady. You seem to be handling it just fine. His smile faltered for a moment, and I regretted my sharp tone. I'm just trying to keep things balanced, he replied, his voice softer now. But if you're not enjoying it, maybe we should rethink this whole thing. The suggestion hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. Part of me wanted to seize the opportunity to retreat, to go back to the comfortable, predictable life we'd shared before. But another part, the part that had been drawn to this new lifestyle, felt a flicker of defiance. Maybe it's not about enjoying it, I countered, meeting his gaze. Maybe it's about exploring new things, trying to find ourselves in this mess. Ben raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Exploring? Huh? And what have you found so far? I hesitated, the question making my heart race. Had I really discovered anything at all? Or was I just chasing a shadow of what I thought I wanted? I don't know, I admitted finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I guess I'm still figuring that out. His eyes softened, and for a moment, the distance between us felt less daunting. Maybe we can figure it out together, he said gently, stepping closer. I wanted to believe him, to cling to that promise of connection, but the weight of my recent experiences loomed large. Yeah, maybe, I replied, the uncertainty lingering in my words. As we stood there, a fragile understanding beginning to bridge the gap between us, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were both on the brink of something. Whether it would be a deeper connection or an irrevocable rift remained to be seen. Ben, on the other hand, seemed to be flourishing in ways I hadn't anticipated. He'd taken to the gym with enthusiasm, his physique becoming leaner and stronger, and he had even upgraded his wardrobe, choosing clothes that showcased his newfound confidence. It was as if he had tapped into a wellspring of independence that unsettled me deeply. The dependable, somewhat predictable Ben I had known was morphing into this more self-assured version of himself, and I found myself grappling with mixed feelings about this change. Hey, I called out, striving to keep my tone casual and light. Do you want to hear about my date last night? He glanced up from his phone, his expression unreadable, and replied, if you want to share. He shrugged, then turned his attention back to the screen. The indifference in his voice struck me like a physical blow, leaving a heavy weight in my chest. When had he stopped being interested in my life? When had he ceased to ask about my experiences? The distance between us felt like an abyss, and I couldn't shake the sense that something had shifted, an invisible barrier rising between us. As I stood there, trying to gauge his reaction, I couldn't help but wonder how we had arrived at this point. The excitement I had hoped to gain from our arrangement was fading, replaced by an unsettling sense of isolation. I recalled the early days of our open marriage, when he would listen with a forced attentiveness, his discomfort evident in his furrowed brow and tight shoulders. Now, he seemed utterly unbothered by my attempts to share, and somehow that felt worse. It's fine, I said, my voice small and hesitant. Nothing special. Ben nodded absently, his attention clearly locked on whatever was happening on his screen. A surge of frustration coursed through me. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to demand that he engage with me. But I didn't. I couldn't. This was what I had asked for, wasn't it? The freedom to explore, to seek out experiences beyond the confines of our marriage. I just never anticipated that it would feel so profoundly lonely. I've got a work outing later this week, Ben said suddenly, looking up at me with a glimmer of enthusiasm. Might meet some new people. My stomach twisted at his words. Oh, I managed to say, striving to keep my voice steady. The thought of him mingling with new faces, possibly sharing moments and connections that I wasn't part of, sent a wave of unease through me. I forced a smile, but inside, a storm was brewing. The irony of my desire for an open marriage was not lost on me. In seeking freedom, I had unwittingly created distance between us, and now, the very thing I had envisioned as a path to fulfillment felt like a road leading to isolation. Anyone in particular? I asked, trying to sound casual, though my heart raced in anticipation. He shrugged again, a small, enigmatic smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Maybe. We'll see. As he turned back to his phone, a feeling of unease washed over me, as if the ground beneath my feet had shifted. The balance between us had changed irrevocably. Ben wasn't merely going along with my plan anymore. He was fully embracing it, and that realization terrified me more than anything else could. I forced a smile, even though he wasn't looking. Well, have fun, I said, my words tasting like ash in my mouth. Turning away, I fought back tears, my chest tightening with a heavy mix of dread and sorrow. In that moment, a startling clarity hit me. I was losing him. The very thing I had hoped would bring us closer was instead creating an insurmountable distance. I could feel the walls closing in, the echoes of laughter and warmth between us fading into silence, leaving behind the chilling realization that I was no longer the center of his world. And the worst part? It was entirely my fault. I had swung open this door, convinced it would lead us to excitement and personal growth. Instead, It was pushing Ben further away from me, creating a chasm I couldn't seem to bridge. Now let's check Ben's side. The soft glow of my laptop screen illuminated the darkened living room, a stark contrast to the restless silence enveloping the house. It was well past midnight, but sleep remained elusive, my thoughts tangled in a web of regret and uncertainty. A faint noise from the bedroom caught my attention. Kathy was tossing and turning, her restlessness palpable in the stillness of the night. I wondered if she was dreaming about her dates, reveling in the excitement she had once claimed to feel. Or perhaps she, too, was lying awake, wrestling with the consequences of the choices that had brought us here. With a sigh, I turned back to the screen, finally typing out a message to someone I had been chatting with, Maria. She was funny, intelligent, and most importantly, she wasn't Kathy. As I hit send, a rush of guilt and exhilaration surged through me. Maria and I had been talking for weeks now, and although nothing physical had happened yet, I couldn't deny the connection we'd formed. She made me feel seen and appreciated in a way that had been missing from my relationship with Kathy for far too long. Suddenly, the bedroom door creaked open, and I quickly minimized the chat window. Kathy padded into the living room, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her hair tousled and her expression still hazy from sleep. "Ben, what are you doing up so late?" she asked, her voice thick with fatigue. I forced a casual smile, my heart racing as I tried to appear nonchalant. "Oh, just catching up on some work emails," I replied, hoping my tone sounded light and convincing. Kathy squinted at me for a moment, searching my face as if trying to gauge whether I was being truthful. I could feel the tension in the air, the unspoken questions hanging between us like a tightrope. As she walked over to the couch, settling into the cushions, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was straddling two worlds. One that felt familiar yet increasingly suffocating, and another that was uncharted but thrillingly uncertain. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked. Kathy nodded, but I noticed the flicker of doubt in her eyes. She had been watching me closely lately, her gaze filled with a confusing mix of confusion and something that looked alarmingly like fear. "Don't stay up too late," she murmured, retreating back to the bedroom. As the door closed behind her, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The guilt gnawed at me, but it was overshadowed by a growing sense of resentment. Wasn't this what Kathy wanted? For us to explore, to find connections outside our marriage? I reopened the chat with Maria, a smile tugging at my lips as I read her response. Her words were warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the uncertainty that had settled in my home. Each message felt like a lifeline, pulling me further away from the doubts that plagued me with Kathy. I began to type back, feeling a rush of excitement at the thought of the connection we were building. In that moment, I realized I craved this new attention, this validation that had been lacking in my relationship. It was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. We were planning to meet for coffee later in the week. Just coffee, I told myself. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. It was a lifeline, a glimpse of what life could be like without the emotional turmoil of our so-called open marriage. As I typed out a response, confirming the time and place for our meeting, I couldn't shake the stark contrast between our experiences. Kathy's grand experiment had backfired spectacularly. Each time she came home from a date, her initial enthusiasm waned, replaced by a more forced smile and a palpable sense of frustration. I could see it in her eyes, the excitement she once radiated now dimmed by exhaustion. Meanwhile, I felt liberated, as if I were stepping into a new version of myself. I couldn't deny the thrill of anticipation bubbling inside me at the thought of meeting Maria. It was a chance to connect with someone who didn't carry the weight of our shared history or the complications of an open relationship. In those moments, I felt as if I was finally breaking free from the constraints that had bound me for so long. The thrill of possibility hung in the air, and I savored it, even as the guilt flickered in the back of my mind. The initial pain and betrayal I had felt began to fade, replaced by a newfound sense of self. I was rediscovering parts of myself I'd long neglected, exploring interests and connections that had fallen by the wayside. Maria was a significant part of that journey. Tomorrow, I resolved. Tomorrow, I would tell Kathy the truth, about Maria, about my feelings, about everything. It was time to end this charade, to confront the consequences of the choice she'd made for both of us. As I drifted off to sleep, my mind buzzed with anticipation, and my last thought lingered on the coffee we would share in just a few days. For the first time in months, a glimmer of hope sparked within me for the future, a future I was beginning to accept might not include Kathy. Let's check Kathy's side of the story. The house was silent, the only sound the soft ticking of the clock on the mantel. I sat curled up on the couch, a cold cup of tea forgotten on the coffee table, my gaze fixed on the front door. Ben was out again, probably with her. How was your night? I had tried to sound casual when he'd left, but the tightness in my throat had given me away. Ben barely glanced up from his phone, offering only a non-committal shrug before disappearing into the night. I thought back to that fateful night when I proposed this disastrous experiment. The hope and misguided enthusiasm I'd felt then had been palpable. I had been so certain it would bring us closer, strengthen our bonds. Instead, it had torn us apart, leaving me alone with the shattered pieces of our relationship. My own attempts at dating had fizzled out weeks ago. Each encounter only left me feeling more hollow and painfully aware of what I was risking. The excitement I had hoped for had turned into an overwhelming sense of loneliness, a feeling that seeped into every corner of my life. But Ben had flourished. The shy, somewhat passive man I had married had been replaced by someone confident, someone who no longer seemed to need me. The sound of a car pulling up jolted me from my reverie. My heart raced as I heard the key in the lock and the door swung open to reveal Ben. He looked happy, relaxed, everything I wasn't. "You're still up," he said, surprise coloring his tone. There was no guilt in his voice, no attempt to explain his late arrival. When had that changed? I couldn't sleep, I murmured, searching his face for any sign of the man I had once known. "Ben, can we talk?" he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's late, Kathy. Can't this wait until morning?" "No, it can't," I insisted, my voice cracking under the weight of my emotions. "Please, Ben," I pleaded, my heart pounding in my chest. "I think we've made a terrible mistake." He met my gaze, his expression unreadable. It was you," I whispered, the weight of his words pressing down on me. "There's no mistake, Kathy," he said quietly, his tone laced with resignation. "This is what you wanted, remember? A modern marriage. Freedom to explore." Tears welled up in my eyes as I tried to find the right words. "But it's not what I want anymore. Can't we just go back? Forget this whole thing ever happened?" Ben's laugh echoed through the quiet room, hollow and devoid of warmth. "Go back? To what, Kathy? To you being bored? To me being taken for granted? No, I don't think we can go back." His words hit me like a physical blow, and I stood frozen, watching helplessly as he turned and walked toward our bedroom. No, his bedroom now. The door closed behind him with a soft click, but it might as well have been a gunshot for the finality it represented. I sank back onto the couch, tears streaming down my face, each drop a reminder of the choices I had made. The enormity of what I had done, of what I had lost, overwhelmed me. I had opened Pandora's box, and now I had no idea how to close it. The echoes of our shared laughter, the warmth of his touch, the sense of security I had once taken for granted, they all felt like distant memories slipping through my fingers. The vibrant hope I had clung to when proposing this experiment had been replaced by a suffocating dread. I curled into myself, the silence of the house amplifying my grief. It was a stark reminder of how quickly things could unravel. What had I been thinking? The freedom I had sought had turned into isolation, and the bond we once cherished was now frayed and fragile. Now let's check Ben's side. The tension in the air was palpable as I walked into our living room. No, my living room. Kathy sat on the couch, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy from crying. It was clear she had been through the ringer again, and part of me, buried deep beneath layers of resentment and newfound independence, ached to comfort her. But that part was easily silenced now. "We need to talk." My voice was calm, steady, and I could see Kathy's heart sink even before I finished the sentence. She knew. Of course, she knew. She wasn't stupid, just misguided. "Ben, please," she began, her voice trembling. "I know I made a mistake. We can fix this. We can go back to how things were." I couldn't help but laugh, a harsh, humorless sound that echoed in the quiet room. "Back to how things were? You mean back to being bored? Back to being taken for granted? You really think we can just erase everything that's happened?" The bitterness in my voice surprised even me, but it felt good to finally say it. Kathy's face fell, the mask of hope slipping away, revealing the raw vulnerability beneath. I thought it would help us grow," she stammered, desperation creeping into her tone. "Grow?" I shot back. "All it's done is push us apart. You wanted to explore, and look where that's led us. You've turned this into a circus, and I'm just supposed to sit back and watch." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I could see the realization dawning on her, The chasm between us was not something we could simply leap back across. We can go back together, she moaned. That sounded harsh and unfamiliar, even to my own ears. Go back? There's no going back, Kathy. You saw to that the moment you decided our marriage wasn't enough for you. She flinched as if I'd struck her, and I felt a twinge of guilt. That's not fair, I thought. I had believed it would bring us closer, make things exciting again. Exciting, I repeated, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. Well, congratulations. You certainly made things exciting, just not in the way you planned. The weight of my words hung heavily in the air, a reminder of the path we'd taken, a path she had insisted on exploring. I could see the hurt in her eyes, the recognition that our reality had shifted irrevocably. Ben, I never meant for it to go this far, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought we could handle it. I thought we were strong enough. Strong enough? I echoed, incredulous. You thought that opening our marriage would strengthen us? You traded in our intimacy for a few nights out with strangers. Kathy shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. I thought it would bring the spark back, make us feel alive again. I didn't realize how much it would hurt you, or me. The raw honesty in her words cut through the bitterness, and for a moment, I felt the urge to soften. But I quickly steeled myself. And look where it got us, I said, my voice colder now. You're lost, Kathy. We both are. And I don't think we can find our way back. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, she looked at me, her expression a mix of sorrow and resignation. I knew then that the chasm between us had widened, and there was no bridge to cross it anymore. I moved to the bookshelf, running my fingers along the spines of the books we'd collected over the years. Each title brought back memories of evenings spent curled up together, lost in stories and laughter on lazy Sunday afternoons. Those moments felt like they belonged to someone else now, a faded echo of a past that seemed increasingly distant. I found someone, I said, turning back to face her. Someone who appreciates me for who I am, who doesn't need to spice things up or experiment with our relationship. Kathy's face crumpled at my words, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Ben, no. Please. I love you. We can work through this. I'll do anything. For a moment, I allowed myself to really look at her. The woman I had once promised to love for better or for worse. She looked small and broken. Her vulnerability laid bare before me. The familiar warmth I once felt for her began to battle with the resentment that had taken root over these past few weeks. Kathy, I said softly, the words catching in my throat. You don't understand. This isn't just a bump in the road. It's a fundamental shift in who we are, in what we wanted. I can't go back to pretending everything is okay. Not when I've finally found someone who makes me feel alive. Her shoulders slumped, and she wiped her tears with the back of her hand, desperation in her eyes. But we can rebuild. We can find a new way to be together. Just give it time. Please, Ben. I shook my head, feeling the weight of her words pressing down on me. Time isn't going to change the fact that you wanted something different. You pushed for this, Kathy, and now it's too late. The finality of my words hung in the air, a heavy silence settling between us. I could see the flicker of hope dimming in her eyes, and it pained me more than I wanted to admit. But I knew deep down that the connection we once shared had been irrevocably altered, and no amount of longing or promises could restore what was lost. But the pity I felt was overshadowed by a cold resolve. This was her doing after all. It's over, Kathy, I said, my voice firm and unwavering. I'm done with this farce of a marriage. I'm done pretending that what we have is enough. You opened this door, and now I'm walking through it. But our vows, she whispered, clinging to the last shreds of our shared past. We promised. Vows. I cut her off, a harsh laugh escaping me. You shattered those vows the moment you suggested this open marriage. You can't pick and choose which parts of our commitment matter, Kathy. It doesn't work that way. Her face fell, and I saw a flicker of realization wash over her. The weight of her choices pressed down on her like a suffocating blanket, and I wondered if she finally understood the implications of what she had set in motion. You don't have to do this, she pleaded, her voice trembling. We can still find a way back. Back to what? I shot back, anger boiling just beneath the surface. To a life of uncertainty and disconnection? To pretending that everything is fine while we drift further apart? I can't go back to that. She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came. Instead, she looked at me as if trying to decipher the man standing before her. The man who had once been her partner, her confidant, now felt like a stranger. Ben, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't realize. I thought we could handle this. I thought it would bring us closer. Closer? I echoed, bitterness lacing my tone. It did the opposite. It revealed all the cracks in our foundation. You wanted excitement, but what you've done is drive a wedge between us. I can't ignore that. Silence enveloped us, heavy and oppressive. Kathy's shoulders slumped, her defenses crumbling. I felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness as I watched her face twist with regret. This was the consequence of her choices, and while I wished it didn't have to be this way, I couldn't take it back. I was done pretending that this was a path we could walk together. I'm sorry, she finally said, her voice barely audible. I never meant for it to end like this. Neither did I replied, but deep down, I knew it was too late. The door had closed behind me, and there was no turning back now. I moved to the door, my hand resting on the knob. I'll be staying with Maria for a while. I'll have someone come by to pick up my things. Maria. Kathy's voice was barely audible, broken and hollow. You're leaving me for her? I turned, fixing her with a steady gaze. I'm not leaving you for her, Kathy. I'm leaving you for me. Maria is just a new beginning, one I never would have found if you hadn't been so determined to modernize our marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me. Kathy's grand experiment, meant to strengthen our bond, had instead given me the strength to break free, to discover a version of myself I never knew existed. Please, Kathy sobbed, reaching out to me. Don't do this. I'll do anything. We can go to counseling. I stepped back out of her reach, the distance between us now feeling insurmountable. Counseling won't fix this, I replied, my voice firm but laced with sadness. This isn't something that can be patched up with therapy sessions or promises. It's about what we've become, two people living separate lives under the same roof. Her eyes glistened with tears, but I couldn't allow myself to be swayed. I wanted to believe in us, she said, her voice cracking. I thought we could make it work, that this would make us stronger. Stronger? I echoed, feeling a rush of frustration. It has only shown us how weak our connection truly was. We were clinging to something that no longer existed, and this was the wake-up call. I can't pretend any longer, Kathy. I won't. The silence hung heavily in the air, and I could see the realization settling in her eyes. She knew I was serious. The hope she had clung to began to fade, replaced by the stark reality of our situation. Ben, she said, her voice small. I never meant for things to end like this. I know, I replied, my heart aching for the past we had shared. But it's time for both of us to face the truth. This isn't working, and it hasn't been for a long time. We owe it to ourselves to find happiness, even if that means letting go. It's done, Kathy. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I hope this modern approach to love brings you all the excitement you craved. Goodbye. With that, I walked out the door, closing it firmly behind me. I could hear Kathy's muffled sobs through the wood, but I didn't turn back. I couldn't turn back. The Ben who would have comforted her, who would have forgiven her misguided attempts at spicing up our marriage, no longer existed. As I walked to my car, where Maria waited with a supportive smile, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The guilt, the resentment, the pain of the past months, it all fell away, replaced by a sense of possibility, of freedom. Kathy had wanted a modern marriage. Well, she got one, just not the one she had imagined. And as I drove away, leaving the remnants of our life together behind, I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. After all, this was the path she had chosen. I was simply following it to its logical conclusion. The modern marriage experiment was over, and in its wake, a new Ben emerged, stronger, more confident, and finally truly free. The road stretched out before me, an open canvas waiting to be filled with new experiences and connections. As I glanced at Maria, her eyes sparkling with understanding, I knew I had made the right choice. For the first time in months, I felt light, unburdened by the expectations and limitations that had once defined my life. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. And for that, I felt a thrill of excitement. I had stepped out of the shadows of my past and into the bright light of possibility. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready to embrace it. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.